That's very heartening that the experiment has worked so well.
Yes, well, it certainly promises for the future.
In 1979, the Thames Water Authority began a scientific experiment which would prove that the River Thames was returning to its status as one of the world's finest salmon rivers.
Yes, I think so. Some few of these out.
I think these fish in particular are going to do well here. They're in such excellent condition.
Oh, they've got very good fins on them.
On the 23rd of August, 1983, Mr. Russell Doig caught a Thames salmon by rod and line. It was the first for 150 years. Salmon are migratory fish. They begin their lives in freshwater rivers, then move to the open sea to feed and grow. To spawn, they return to their home river and attempt to find the same spot their parents found 2 or 3 years earlier. Until the middle of the 19th century, the River Thames used to be one of the finest salmon rivers, with salmon running up in their thousands to the swift-flowing tributaries of the upper reaches. But the Industrial Revolution took its toll, and the salmon population declined. The ecosystem in the estuary was totally destroyed, and all aquatic life killed by industrial and domestic waste. Salmon migrations were then impossible. In 1961, the Pippard report recommended a cleanup and led to the suggestion that even salmon could survive, provided that the oxygen content could be maintained at sufficient levels. Today, with the Industrial Revolution over and the current pollution strictly controlled, the river is clean. Mike Andrews, senior biologist with Thames Water, trawls the estuary to monitor the life and growth of the river's inhabitants.
What's running all right?
Yes, well, we're just trawling at the moment. There's a bottom trawl. We're looking for the young fish living on the bed of the estuary. There won't be too much here at this time of year because of the season. Most of the fish away at sea breeding or else upriver breeding. We do hope to catch some of the young flounder coming in though. The dominant fish fauna should be flounder here. Maybe a few eel, maybe a few smelt. Well, all I can see at the moment are flounder and shrimp, which is probably what I would expect at this time of year. There's a young Dover sole there. This is the flounder. This is the Dover sole. These will be 1-year-old fish.
7.
Each fish is measured and returned to the water.
8.
Valuable information gives the scientists a very clear picture of the ecological condition of the river.
By looking at the peak numbers of this growth distribution here, we can tell how fast the fish are growing and how their growth this year compares with last year, or the size this month compared with last month. So we can assess the amount they're feeding and the way they're growing throughout the season.
8.
The river water is pumped on board and monitored by an oxygen analyzer. It is presently running at just below 60%, a figure undreamed of by the recommendations of the Pippard report, when a figure of 10% was considered high. Much of this success is due to the improved sewage treatment plants sited along the river banks.
The big one at Beckton Sewage Treatment Works, we're just off Beckton now, treats 250 million gallons of sewage from North London each day. And you can see that the effluent is perfectly clean now. In fact, it's cleaner than the river water it's going into. The dissolved oxygen in the river at present is running at about 60% of the saturation value. Now, if you look at it in the context of salmon requiring 30%, you'll realize that the water is sufficiently clean for even the most fastidious of fish to survive.
It is spring, upstream in the freshwater reaches of the Thames Valley. Beneath the surface, a future generation of salmon lie amongst the gravel. When hatched, some 5 months after laying, life for the salmon alevin depends solely on the nourishment provided by its yolk sac. After 3 to 4 weeks, the sac is depleted, and the tiny fry, as they are now called, must fend for themselves. They become territorial, feeding on passing stream invertebrates, tiny organisms carried in the swirling currents. The food is plentiful and growth rapid. By late summer, scales begin to form and the characteristic markings appear. They are now known as salmon parr. Over the next 1 or 2 years, dependent on conditions, they continue to grow, until when the time is right, a major physiological and behavioral change occurs, known as smoltification. As smolts, they then journey to the sea, not to return until they are fully fledged salmon.
Fairly big trout. Yeah. Well, salmon have been seen in the area.
Carrying out the Thames Water Salmon Rehabilitation Project are 2 enthusiastic fisheries officers, Nigel Reeder and Peter Goff.
Using that to a large extent. But any salmon moving up are going to stop here, I think.
Yep. Well, they've got this very good holding pool over here to...
Both are committed to helping the salmon return and spawn naturally in the Thames.
Personally, I'm interested in salmon because it's got this remarkable life cycle of being born in fresh water and migrating to the sea and then coming back as a very strong and powerful big fish. And I'm very interested in the Atlantic salmon from the point of view of a conservationist, that there is a certain amount of pressure on the Atlantic salmon from commercial fisheries, and I'm very interested in maintaining the species, preserving it for posterity. So.
Well, I think out of all the fish which I studied while I was at university, it's by far the most interesting. It's got a very varied life cycle. Its migrations are absolutely amazing, and it presents more of a problem to fisheries management today than most other species.
At the moment, the run of salmon in the Thames is maintained by purely artificial purposes, although we have had some indications of natural spawning occurring in the river. We don't think that this is as yet contributing towards the return of adults. This is one of our major goals, to produce natural spawning in the river.
Yes, it is a difficult fish to raise and to manage. It needs fast-flowing water, cool, well oxygenated, and as little interference from man as possible, really.
But in order to achieve a successful conclusion to the experiment, careful, calculated interference is essential.
Well, it's important to know exactly what...
Thousands of baby salmon parr and smolt are reared each year and released in the Thames.
You can see they're starting to smolt already, can't you?
Keeping track of them is difficult, but Peter and Nigel must be able to gauge the numbers returning to compare with the numbers released. To monitor these movements, a way of tagging has been devised by the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. They implant a coded micro-tag into the salmon's nose. It may look painful, but the fish is anesthetized and feels nothing. The micro-tag does not affect the life of the fish in any way. Made of stainless steel wire, it is biologically inert and carries a binary code of 14 digits, identifying these fish as Thames salmon parr.
At least 600.
So that tagged fish can be recognized, the adipose fin is removed. This is painless and does not affect their survival or swimming performance.
Yeah, I think we'll hold some of these fish for a few days to make sure they recover all right, and then get them into the nursery stream. How many have we released here this year now? This must be 12,000?
It's round about that score, yes.
Yes.
As soon as they can look after themselves, they are placed in one of the many streams and tributaries of the Thames Valley. Here they live in a natural environment and become familiar with the unique quality of the water and learn the taste of the Thames.
These are salmon par. They are about a year old now. We would expect them to stay in the stream for about another year before they start to smoltify and begin their migration downstream.
They'll dive straight for cover until they reorientate themselves after transport and stocking, and then they'll gradually develop their own individual territories, and they'll become territorial and fight off other salmon of their own sort, and they'll begin to compete with the brown trout here as well.
The main predators in this stream are in fact birds, mainly herons, but occasional kingfishers as well. And experience has since shown in the 2 years we've stocked it that survival is in fact very good here. It's the best survival of salmon that we've found in the whole catchment.
Carry on down the left side of this riffle down here, I think.
They go straight into the cover as soon as they're in there, straight into all the cover that's there. We fish each autumn to assess the survival and growth of the fish. And in the past we've found that their survival is very good. We've had up to 30% before. Growth is ample as well. They don't go quite as large as some other streams, but they do successfully smoltify and migrate away from here.
The salmon par continue to grow in their own individual stretch of the tributary until they feel the need to turn from swimming against the current to swimming with it. A change of direction that will carry them downstream and out to sea. When this happens, the par have begun to smoltify and become seagoing salmon smolt.
Well, the change of direction can be quite sudden. One morning the fish may be facing upstream, and yet just in that afternoon they've turned around and are facing downstream, swimming with the current. We think it's at this time that they're most susceptible to imprinting on their home river. Right then.
Smolt are also stocked, but closer to the sea, and will provide valuable information on the difference between this and par stocking when the numbers of returning fish are calculated the following year.
So when we're releasing fish into the river, either smolts which we've reared ourselves or those that we've brought down from Wales, it's important to get the timing just right so they spend sufficient imprinting time in the Thames, where we hope they're going to return as adults next year. When a salmon becomes imprinted to a river, it learns to recognise a river as its own home river.
Since the project started in 1979, we've tried to release at least 5,000 smolts every year.
The smolts linger to find their bearings. Then, energetic in their newfound adolescence, instinct prompts them on a great journey. For the salmon smolt, life is only just beginning. Through the Pool of London, swimming fast through the clean waters of the Thames estuary, invigorated by the salt water, they turn north, following the flow of the seasonal currents. Most will stop at the Faroe Islands, north of Scotland, but some will journey on, navigating probably by the Earth's magnetic field and the relative position of the sun and stars until they reach Iceland, and some will even reach the ice cliffs of Greenland. Food is different and plentiful. Shrimp, krill, squid, sprat and herring are the salmon's food supply. Here they will spend 1 or 2 winters before feeling the urge to return to their spawning grounds. Once more, navigating by instinct, they cross the North Atlantic. Entering the North Sea and following the east coast of Britain, there are some 40 rivers. They will investigate, until finally they find the River Thames and home.
The fish has swum an awful long way, depleted its body reserves to a large extent, and then has to overcome the enormous change of environment from salt water to fresh water, and its ionic regulation is totally changed in a very short time.
Only the strong survive. The epic journey has taken its toll, and many salmon fail to return. As few as 16 from every 1,000 released. But for those that do return, a final challenge awaits them. Their goal, the spawning beds, lie beyond the many weirs that obstruct the Thames from Teddington to Oxford. Vertical concrete and steel barriers, designed without a thought for the salmon homeward bound after a journey over thousands of miles.
Well, there are a number of problems here. The steps behind me, for example, pose quite a significant problem for the salmon. Although they may be able to get past one or two of them, a series of half a dozen as we have here is virtually impossible for the fish to move past them. The vertical gates further over there, it's just too great a height for the salmon to take off from. And there is some metalwork beneath the gates there which would inhibit the salmon from emptying that area. Fish have been seen jumping in the corner over there, and it seems likely to us that that might be one of the areas which salmon have used to pass this weir before.
This is in fact the 7th main weir up the river, but we consider it to be one of the most impassable and possibly the first major obstacle for the fish to come up as they come upstream. Although Molesey Weir, which is the 2nd weir upstream, would also present a fairly major obstacle for the fish.
It is vital that the salmon are able to move upriver at all times of the year, especially during the early spring and summer when the salmon run takes place. To help them through Molesey, the 2nd weir upstream, a fish pass has been constructed. A fish pass with a devious difference. They can swim in, but they cannot swim out. The salmon are trapped and await release to the far side by Peter and Nigel, who then count the numbers returning from previous years.
From our experience of the last 2 years, we would expect salmon to be showing in the river towards the end of July and onwards. And from the end of July, you could come down to the weir here and see salmon actually jumping up the weir in the evenings and in the early mornings. And we would be expecting to come down to the trap and to be catching salmon in the trap every day from the end of July onwards through to September, October, November.
Now, at last, the years of work begin to bear fruit. The last time Peter and Nigel saw this fish, he was 15 centimetres long.
65.5. Some tweezers. It's a male. Can you just hold its tail for me, please?
It's really silver, isn't it?
It is. Fish grow scales in much in a similar way as trees grow, that they grow rings in them, and you can tell by looking at the scale how old the fish is, and you can also tell when it's actually been in fresh water and when it's been in salt water, because there's a difference in growth rate and a difference in the rate of laying down of these rings. You got the number?
Where are you, beauty? Oh, look at that. It's beautiful.
Superb.
Absolutely gorgeous. It's a female, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a male.
Oh, yeah.
So the long snout on it, the kite starting. Take a minute or two to recover. Just hold it until it's ready to go completely.
He's getting very strong now. He's recovered all right.
And here he goes then. He'll go straight upstream at this time of day as well.
I think he'll be at Sunbury Weir before the night's out.
Yeah.
But often, salmon are not that easy to catch.
After all we do for these salmon, and what do? They disappear.
The angler has difficulty catching salmon because they rarely feed in fresh water and are not attracted to bait. But Thames Water electrofishes, a process harmless when using special equipment and only permitted for scientific and research purposes. In this way, the success of the experiment can be monitored.
The fish are initially stunned by the electrofishing equipment, but recover very quickly afterwards. And this is one point with electrofishing for salmon, that you have to be, the recovery period is so rapid that you have to be very quick in actually catching the fish.
Forward! Forward, Martin! Quick! It's right under the buck here. There it goes! Hey! It's another nice fish, look. Look at that beauty. That is really fresh. All right, yeah, let's take these back and then come back for the rest of them.
Right. I wonder what the final score was in the test match.
Ah, pretty poor, I should think.
The only thing that could have saved us was if it rained all day at Old Trafford.
Yeah. Each year it's important for us to retain some fish for breeding purposes later in the season. Having caught them throughout the late summer and early autumn, we bring them by road to this site here and keep them in these concrete tanks. As you can see, they're about 18 feet wide, a couple of feet deep, good flow of well-oxygenated water.
How are they going to behave themselves?
Very powerful as well.
Come on, very big, strong fish. Look at that. Isn't he lovely? It's one of our males.
It does stress the fish, moving them out of the natural river and into fish trailers and up into these ponds, but the water quality here is very good, and we also treat the fish with salt and various fungicides. Got him?
Okay.
All right?
Yes!
It's another nice male, that one.
It is, isn't it? Very active, ever so frisky.
They recover and live very happily here for 2 to 3 months until late November and early December.
And we keep them in here under cover so that the stress on the fish is kept to a minimum and they don't try and leap out of the tanks. And to date we've had a good deal of success in keeping them in this way.
For the remaining summer days, the same work continues. Monitoring the numbers of salmon running up the Thames, electrofishing to retrieve a scale, and helping the exhausted fish over the weirs, allowing them to reach their final destination of gravelly spawning beds in the swift-flowing tributaries of the Thames Valley. Until winter, where upstream in shallow water, tragedy is near. The female salmon, having prepared a bed in the gravel, is joined by a mate. Together, they deposit their eggs and sperm. But for most, the rigorous journey and the effort of spawning will have been too great. Many females and most males now will die.
I don't think it's a conscious sacrifice. I think they return to spawn, and in doing so, they so wear themselves out that they don't survive. Not all salmon die anyway. Females in particular can return to spawn for a second and occasionally third and fourth times. Generally, I think you'll find the majority of the males do die. Ready to go? Certainly is.
For those in captivity, they too will spawn, but with a helping hand from the fishery officers.
The area here. Yeah, I like that. Okay, let's see what she's got.
Yeah, so they come.
There's hardly any pressure needed of that at all.
No, she's really beautiful, aren't they?
They're small again though.
Yeah, how many would you say we get in this fish? Around about 4 to 5,000 or something like
It's
that?
upwards of 4,000 for a fish this size.
Yeah.
It's what, 2.5 kilos, something like that. We're looking for 90% survival plus to hatching, whereas natural would survival would be less than 10%.
This is really what we want to do as well, to try and produce a proper Thames strain of salmon.
That's right. Selective breeding, as you say, is going to produce a nice Thames run. Well, she's done her business well, hasn't she? Look at the state of her now.
She'll come round from the anaesthetic fairly quickly over there.
Yeah, she'll lie on her side for a while, but she'll recover quickly.
Right. So we've got to fertilise them with 2 males, just in case one of the males is infertile.
That's right.
4,000 eggs from one female. These and the eggs from other females ensure Thames par and smolt for the next season's stocking. A guaranteed strain of Thames salmon running upriver of their own free will. Already there are signs of natural spawning in the Thames. But in what numbers? How many survive the cycle and return? Help is still at hand and will continue until the salmon can breed and return naturally. But even now, there is a strain of salmon that regard the Thames as home. And for the first time in 150 years, the River Thames can be regarded as a true salmon river. Perhaps, once again, to be one of the world's finest.